to do a hit like that against me, or to try to do a hit, it's probably going to pay quite a bit of money, and I don't think I've really seen where all of that money went and where it is. Some of it might be offshore, since Monica is half Hispanic. I think she has access to Mexico. And I think that, and I know that Tim went to Canada. Tim Henderson was going back and forth from Canada to the United States. And so, you know, where the money gets sent and where it's put, I'm not sure. All I know is that I just wanted to clarify a few things about the last video that I made, and to reiterate the fact that the United States government did try killing me. And it is over my music, and they have been kidnapping all of my baby girls, and then they force relocation of me so that they can try to rape me again. That's their big thing, is they basically have not wanted me to have any money. They constantly would cause some sort of a rift in my family. That's their strategy, and that's what they've done every single time. Try to cause like some big family tumultuous situation. If I wasn't getting forced out of housing because supposedly my parents were selling the same house for the 5th time in a location, it was I would be on my own, and like the entire community action team and the housing people in the entire area were coming up with lies and reasons why I should be forced out of housing, which is what happened in Wenatchee. And if it wasn't that, it was somebody, I could even be in an apartment and not having any problems, like maybe even getting by just barely. And for example, when I was filing my lawsuits as a plaintiff in Multnomah County, and I had 3 lawsuits filed. And I was living near the Lewis and Clark Law Library, and I didn't have any problems with my apartment. I paid all my rent on time, paid all my utilities, and I was just barely getting by, but I was getting by, I was making it. And I didn't have a bunch of additional expenses from a kid that the United States government was trying to kidnap from me at the time. So, so all of a sudden, next thing I knew, somebody was going to my apartment manager and saying I was nuts to her, and that they had problems with me, and they were delivering notices and legal mail to my apartment manager instead of to me. Instead of to my door at my apartment, they were giving it to the apartment manager, which is not something that any manager of an apartment would like. And the person that I saw talking with her was John Camp. And John Camp is a FBI employee for a fact. If he's CIA, that would be something new that I was not aware of. It is really possible, since I knew a lot of people from the German division of the CIA at one time. It's like remotely possible that maybe he's connected to the CIA, but as far as I know, when I knew him when he was younger, I thought he was connected to FBI. So that's, I do know he is with one of those government agencies. And he was used by the government to basically cause problems and disruption with the apartment manager at the time. To once again, and then she gave me a notice telling me I had to leave. So I had another forced location in that situation when I had 0 prior problems with the apartment, and I paid my rent on time, wasn't making noise or disturbing any of the other neighbors either. She just said that she was not comfortable with my living there anymore. So this is the kind of thing that the United States government has been doing, and then they've set their basically their fucked up government men around every time that they try to force me out, because they want me to be forced into positions where I'm having to accept housing where I don't want to accept housing, or having to run around looking for work at some other location. They constantly tried to move me around from one place to the next. Also, they were always trying to disrupt my education, because whenever they disrupted my education, that gave them some kind of a foothold, something to sink their teeth into, and to say, oh, she's deteriorating mentally because she's not able to keep up with her schoolwork. Well, they would do a whole bunch of things to make it impossible for me to keep up with my schoolwork. Well, I mean, what have they done this time that they did the last three times with my baby girl? They kidnapped my baby. They traumatized me, lied about me, and defamed me. they've sexually harassed me. They've used police to come around for a third time to sexually harass me. They've used police to physically try to be intimidating as a presence, which was actually a lot worse when I was a kid because of what they were doing. And supposedly my aunt got cancer all of a sudden, breast cancer. So they were saying, using my family and trying to get me really worried about my Aunt Lachlan having breast cancer. Well, she's suddenly had breast cancer 3 times. I've never been around her any of those times and never really seen actual chemo ever done. But supposedly, she's had a sudden discovery of a lump in her breast 3 times. And this is the 3rd time. It's kind of like Judy Rourke dying. Like, Judy Rourke is dead. Okay, well, you know, like a decade later, we're living next to Judy Rourke. Well, let's move to Oregon now. Guess who our neighbors are? Have you met them? Hi, Judy. And you're not even thinking, as a kid, you're not even thinking, this is the same Judy that the FBI told me was dead, like 12 years ago. Or not 12 years ago. Like, at that time, it was more like 6 years ago. And it's just such a crazy thing to do that you don't even process something like that. You just, out of all the things that the government did to me, which thing am I going to focus and think on most? Which is why they did so many things to me. They wanted to have so much for me to be distressed over that I wouldn't think about all of the different events all at once, all at one time, pretty much. So, and it's natural that if you're away from someone for a very long time, especially as a kid, for appearances to change and people to change and circumstances to change and to not remember someone in a certain setting. So, so basically, you know, they used my aunt to say that, to cause distress, saying that she was dying of cancer maybe. And they said my grandma was dying. Granny was supposedly had Alzheimer's, and she was really at the end of her rope, and it was going to take a miracle for her to still live. And they did that 3 different times. 2 of the times they told me to drive over there and see if I could help out. And it was right during finals. So basically, I couldn't get any of my finals done. I didn't do any finals, and I failed everything. So basically, the government was using that to set me up to fail out of my college terms, so that they had a better foothold in their case against me, and also to force me out of financial aid. They also forced me all of a sudden at the next juncture, when I had another set of exams, to move, to relocate to a different area that had like no bus at all in place. So suddenly, and at the time in the past, like now they're telling me that there is internet connection out there, and that's possible. I mean, maybe it's more modernized, and maybe there is Wi-Fi out there now because there is electricity. But back then, when I was a teen, they were telling me that there was Wi-Fi, and I'd get out there and there wasn't. There was no Wi-Fi. So I couldn't keep up with my online classes when I didn't have Wi-Fi. And there was not a bus to take me to the library every day, so I was having to spend like 3 hours of my day walking to the library so I could have 1 hour of library time to try to keep up with full-time college courses. And when I one time was not living, I tried to live in a project housing in Coos Bay. I moved over there, and that was for one of the cases. It was for the first time, the first case that I had. And I moved to a project housing, thought that that was going to work out. And instead, their Wi-Fi was like grasshopper Wi-Fi. It was like jumping all over the place, and I couldn't keep a connection. So I was having a horrible problem keeping my Wi-Fi connection to keep my college courses going there. And then all of a sudden, they introduced this woman who said she wanted to come over and just chat sometime. And she went over to the apartment manager. I hadn't said anything strange to her at all. And I was just trying to be friendly because, especially as a kid, younger girl back then, I had no friends. And all these government people were surrounding me all the time. So I invited her in and wanted to talk or whatever. Well, she decided, she first told me that she was having all these government problems. And she wanted me to talk about my government problems. And I just barely said a couple things, but hardly anything that was nothing out of the ordinary. She used that as an excuse to go to the apartment manager and say that I was nuts, so the apartment manager kicked me out. So here was a Coke Hill housing authority using the excuse of our tenant is not comfortable with you living here. And then like decades later, that's when I was young, and that was to force me out of housing. And the United States government was using that same exact tactic decades later when I was an adult, and trying to work on my lawsuits with some members of the government mentioned. And they decided to use their good old trusty government pal, John Camp, to say bad things to my apartment manager when I didn't even have other people from the apartment complex over to my house. I kept it all to myself. I mean, I didn't have people over. I didn't invite trouble. So he just decided to create a problem since there was not a problem by having their couriers for all of the service that they had to do for motions and judges' orders and that kind of thing, had them knocking on her door all times of the day, and they had her getting sent all of my legal mail. So she started to get really bothered and started saying the excuse was, how come you're in lawsuits? Started trying to make me look bad, like I was nuts and I'd filed a bunch of lawsuits and you don't want her living here because she might sue your apartment complex for anything, you know. So the government was intruding into whatever space I had with trying to force me to move all around, all over the place. And most of that was to force me out of lawsuits, to impoverish me, to keep my GPA down when I actually had the ability to obtain a high GPA, and to for purposes of kidnapping my children unhindered, and for purposes of raping me. And then they'd chase me around, they get all excited for the next fox hunt, you know, so that their fucking dogs could try to track me down. And, you know, I was like the little fox on the run, because the United States government was using all of their employees to cause problems for me no matter where I went. So I just wanted to include the fact of Valerie Plame being connected to Mike Nichols and to some Canadians that showed up on that back road near my house, because it is true that they did try to kill me. And I think that there was something else that I possibly wanted to mention from the last video clip that I made to clarify something, but I think that is probably, those are some of the most important things. Just want to make sure that it didn't sound like I was wearing just plain swimsuit to the court, and that I did include some of the information about the kinds of government people that have been interested in me. And so, you know, it's pretty nuts that Valerie Plame kept popping up into my life repeatedly, because sometimes she was showing up in a back road. Other times it was like she was asking me if I wanted to get trained by the CIA for weapons proliferation. You know, why would she be asking me to get trained for weapons proliferation when I was a fucking goddamn good songwriter and they were stealing all my songs? I mean, is she really serious? Like, the CIA was seriously, like, even when I was at the CIA offices in Virginia and they're saying, "Are you going to work with us?" I had all my family members in CIA offices back there. And they're saying, "Do you want to work with us?" Fuck no. Don't want to work with you assholes. And I didn't mean assholes as in my family, that they were assholes. I meant, are you crazy? Like, I want to work for the government that steals from me? But here they were asking me, anyway, you want to work for us? You know, you can come over here and be with us. You don't have to be all by yourself, Cameo. They wanted me to cry. Here, they just kidnapped my baby girl from me. You don't have to be all by yourself, Cameo. You're choosing this for yourself. You don't have to be alone. You're not alone. You know, you can join us. They're saying that kind of crap. And then people like Valerie Plame were talking to me over in London when I was there once, asking me if I wanted to work for CIA as a weapons proliferation analyst person. I mean, I think it was analyst. I think that's what the tone it took when I heard the proposition. And yet they're going to offer me those jobs, but they know that here I'll be working in their offices or working with these people, and they've been responsible for stealing all of my songs and making music videos and everything else. Like, so why the hell would they get their CIA people out there to constantly ask me if I want to work with them? It's almost like they just kind of wanted to make it look like we're friendly. We're very friendly, and we want you to be our friend. You want to be our friend? You know, it's like they were constantly, and the FBI did that too. You want to work with us? And then getting pissed off that, no, I don't want to be a part of your safe cracker unit for the domestic side of the FBI. You know, even though Erica Wilbank and Shannon Adams and the Bechtold family, they were all part of that because I saw them as kids practicing it, along with my parents. And I saw Monica there too, Monica Allen, but I did not see her practicing going through the laser wires. Like, you had to do some, like, trying to go through. They had to, in order to become limber and get used to the idea of making it through evading laser beams from, like, art museums and different things like that. They had thin lines drawn out that you had to go in and out of very carefully without touching them or having one triggered or fall off or whatever pulled. And then later, after everyone did that, they claimed that they were just trying to entrap me and set me up, and that all these other kids didn't have that kind of work, and that they were just seeing if that's the kind of work that I had done in the past, and if I was guilty of committing some crimes in the past. Well, the FBI was constantly trying to frame me because they were guilty of laundering my money and of raping me when I was a kid. And those government kids that I mentioned, all of them did do safe cracking with the U.S. government. I don't know what kind of a capacity they did that in for domestic stuff, but the CIA typically, and the international groups, sometimes did things like recovery of art from Nazi things. That's an example of a typical international group job. And so anyway, they did use me. They used me temporarily. It didn't pay me anything. And they've been stealing all of my songs and my kids. And I've never once been to court in front of a jury for any of this. They've never had a legal reason to do any of these things to me. And that's what I have to say for right now. So, I'd really like to get some evidence from some people in other countries.